Discussions of theocracy usually circle around familiar cases.
The papal states, Calvin's Geneva, or even modern Iran.
But Buddhist states pose a problem that political science rarely addresses.
Unlike Abrahamic traditions, Buddhism has no creator god who grants authority. Yet today in countries like Thailand and Bhutan, and even within the central Tibetan administration in exile, political power is still justified through explicitly religious frameworks. Monarchs and governments continue to claim a kind of sacred legitimacy, but without invoking an omnipotent deity.
This raises two questions. How exactly do the states construct authority today? And have they not become purely ceremonial, as happened in Europe?
To answer this, we will focus on 3 modern case studies and trace the ideas behind their legitimacy. But first, we need 2 things: a working definition of theocracy and a short historical overview of Buddhist kingship, just enough to understand why the problem looks so different here. Before turning to the historical background, we need a working definition of theocracy. The common understanding frames it as a form of government where one or more deities are recognized as the supreme ruling authority, delegating power to human intermediaries. This model fits well for Abrahamic traditions, where divine will is often central to political legitimacy. Buddhism, however, complicates this picture. It has no creator god who grants a mandate to rule, nor deities directly involved in the state governance. Yet Buddhist monarchs and governments have historically justified their authority in explicitly religious terms. I discussed whether Buddhism is a religion at all in a separate video, link in the description. Anyway, in modern scholarship, a related term, ecclesiocracy, is sometimes used instead. A rule conducted through religious institutions and their leaders rather than through the authority of a deity. But for simplicity, and because most researchers do the same, I will continue to use theocracy today. This distinction is crucial though, because in medieval Europe the divine mandate rested on God's will, and the eventual erosion of this idea led to monarchies becoming largely ceremonial. In Buddhist contexts, legitimacy developed differently. Authority was tied to the ruler's personal qualities, moral conduct, and relationship with the Sangha, the Buddhist monastic community. To understand why this alternative model emerged, we need to look briefly at the history of Buddhist kingship, beginning with the figure who shaped it most profoundly, Emperor Ashoka. Buddha Shakyamuni himself, the historical Buddha, found patronage in some states of northern India during his lifetime, but they did not become Buddhist theocracies. For Asia, though perhaps for the whole world, the adoption of state religions began at the turn of ancient and medieval history. However, for my topic today, I need to touch on the personality of Ashoka, the ruler of Mauryan dynasty from 3rd century BC. Ashoka was one of the first emperors to adopt Buddhism as his personal religion. He patronized Buddhism and spread it through ancient India, including modern-day Pakistan and Afghanistan. However, it is important to remember that he did not make Buddhism the official religion of the state. Helping to spread Buddhism, building numerous monasteries and stupas, Ashoka became one of the most revered figures in Buddhism. Almost all Buddhists know about Ashoka today, even far beyond India, for example both in Thailand and Mongolia. So over time, Buddhists began to refer to Ashoka as Chakravartin, a term that meant exclusively a ruler who ruled according to the canons of the Buddha's teachings. In advance, the term Chakravartin will not be applied to other rulers and will remain only a theoretical ideal. No one will dare using it in relation to contemporaries. However, Ashoka remained the ideal of a ruler as a person who served according to the canons of Dharma, that is, the teachings of Buddha. Moreover, the example of Ashoka showed that in order to be revered among Buddhists as a kind of an ideal ruler, one should not so much be born as one or receive some kind of a divine vision, like a prophecy, but acquire during one's life the moral qualities revered by Buddhist teachings. That's why I started with him, because it is the first significant example of the legitimization of power according to Buddhism. After Ashoka, there were many medieval states in history with Buddhism as the state religion. One way or another, they were based on at least 2 factors: the moral qualities of the ruler and his support for the church institution. although I will describe the full set of factors at the end of the video.
However, as I have noted earlier, with the transition to modern history, many theocracies and monarchies have become purely ceremonial. But what happened to Buddhist theocracies? Let us consider 3 modern examples.
Thailand. Thailand is a parliamentary constitutional monarchy with no official state religion, but the king is required to be a Buddhist and vows to be the official upholder and protector of the faith at the inauguration. The connection between monarchy and religion lies through the conception of Dhammaraja, the righteous king who rules according to the Dhamma or Buddhist moral laws and teachings. The term Dhammaraja is widely applied to the king of Thailand. It is important not to get confused in terms. Dhammaraja is a powerful protector and supporter of Dharma, but Chakravartin is a ruler who led to the establishment of an ideal Buddhist order in society. Chakravartin epithet is more significant. So anyway, unlike the divine right monarchs of medieval Europe, the Thai king's legitimacy is not derived from a god, but from his personal moral qualities and his support for the Sangha. In Thai culture, there is a term for his moral qualities, barami, which translates as prestige and refers to the charismatic qualities accumulated over past lives, bordering on supernatural abilities. It is a crucial element in legitimizing royal power in Thailand, and I want to emphasize once again its direct link to the monarch's personal qualities. Don't worry, I have added all the terms used in the video description. The king possesses real power, but it is not expressed quite directly. Duncan McCargo described this system as network monarchy. According to McCargo, royal authority in Thailand does not operate directly through formal political institutions, but through an informal network, linking the palace, senior monks and elites. This network collectively sustains the image of the monarchy as the central moral and cultural pillar of the nation. The Sangha plays a crucial role in this arrangement. While the monastic community is officially regulated by the state, the king appoints the supreme patriarch, the head of the Sangha. It also acts as a key source of symbolic legitimacy. Monks participate in royal ceremonies, publicly bless the king's reign, and reinforce his status as Dhammaraja. In return, the monarchy funds monasteries, protects their institutional autonomy, and integrates Buddhist imagery into state rituals. Overall, Thailand's monarchy gains legitimacy through a unique blend of Buddhist morality and institutional networks rather than divine mandate. Central is the concept of Dhammaraja, whose authorities rests on personal virtue and protection of Buddhism. The Sangha sustains symbolic legitimacy by blessing the king, participating in royal rituals, and affirming his sacred role. In turn, the monarchy funds monasteries and integrates Buddhist imagery, creating a hybrid system of secular governance and religious sacralization. Both of these significant factors are also important for the population of Thailand, mainly Buddhists, so the described concept actually legitimizes power in the eyes of the citizens. Bhutan. Bhutan transitioned to a constitutional monarchy in 2008, but religion remains deeply embedded in the foundation of the state legitimacy. Bhutan has a state religion, moreover, it has a specific school of Tibetan Buddhism, Drukpa Kagyu. There is freedom of religion, but as already obvious, the king must be a Buddhist. Unlike Thailand, where the king's authority is tied to Barami, Bhutan grounds its monarchy in the doctrine of Choi Sidnyi, or the dual system of governance. This principle, first established in 17th century by the 5th Dalai Lama, asserts the political authority, Sid, and the Buddhist teachings, Choi, must coexist harmoniously to sustain the Dharma and protect the nation. Political power is expressed through the monarch and religious power through the chief patriarch. The Manchuk dynasty, which has ruled since 1907, positions itself as the protector of this dual system. Bhutanese kings are seen not only as political leaders, but as moral exemplars and patrons of Buddhism. Again, we have the factor of the personal qualities of the monarch as a factor of legitimization. The Bhutanese believe that the king is born a king because of his merits from past lives, which means that he has already achieved some good moral qualities. But in addition to the accumulated merits, the king must demonstrate these qualities in this life as well. The Bhutanese Sangha also plays a significant role. Monks participate in state ceremonies, advise the king on moral governance, and act as custodians of the country's sacred identity. Yet unlike in Thailand, the Sangha's institutional autonomy is greater, which reinforces its authority as an independent source of legitimacy. The monarch in Bhutan certainly has real political power. Not only was it his personal decision to adopt a constitution in 2008, but he also takes part in establishing international relations by making foreign trips. In short, Bhutan's monarchy survives because it successfully balances tradition and modernity. By grounding political authority in Buddhist morality and aligning it with national identity, the kings maintain both symbolic and practical power. In the eyes of citizens, this connection between spiritual duty and political leadership legitimizes the monarchy far beyond ceremonial status. Tibet. The Tibetan government functioned according to the system of Chöi Ni until exile of 14th Dalai Lama. After that, the central Tibetan administration carries out the functions of uniting the Tibetan people and is located in India, in Dharamsala. Of course, Tibetan refugees are subject to the laws of the country in which they are located. So, in fact, the administrative part of the work of the Tibetan administration is very limited. As strange as it may sound, but now de facto they work more as a non-government organization. However, what is important for us in today's context is the ongoing legitimization of the 14th Dalai Lama. Tibetan refugees do not recognize the Chinese administration and continue to see the 14th Dalai Lama as their immediate leader and still some kind of a king. Tibetan people believe that the Dalai Lama is an incarnation of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara. That gives us the first example in the list of Buddhist theocracies where power is exercised by direct intervention of the deity. Of course, personal qualities are also important, but it makes no sense to talk about them when we talk about the governance by the literal deity. So this fits the direct understanding of theocracy. But there is a nuance. This theocracy does not have power over the state right now, and also, after globalization, there are many non-Tibetan Buddhist adherents, which raises the following question. Do all Tibetan Buddhist followers recognize Dalai Lama as a king? He's a leader of Tibetan people, but for everyone else, not really. Even the followers of the same lineage, Gelugpa, do not always address him as a king, but more as a spiritual leader. Of course, his direct connection and work with the Sangha and all Tibetan schools helps with the legitimization. The title itself is a spiritual part of the previously mentioned dual Tibetan system, so he is first a spiritual leader and a part of the Sangha, and only then a de facto Tibetan monarch. The Tibetan example, even in exile, is necessary for the consideration of Buddhist theocracies, as it is more an exception than a rule. Nowhere else does a ruler take on the title of a bodhisattva incarnation. Even the title of Chakravartin was almost never used. However, this example clearly shows the ambiguity of legitimizing power in a religion, such as Buddhism, in the absence of an all-powerful God. So let's return to the original question. How do Buddhist theocracies maintain legitimacy today? From the examples described, it is still possible to construct a certain pattern that will clearly distinguish it, even with exceptions, from its European counterparts. First, personal moral qualities. The qualities of the ruler themselves determine his degree of legitimacy, something that can be seen since the time of Ashoka. However, when combined with the philosophy of Buddhism and the concept of accumulation of merit, this goes into the second point. Accumulated virtue from past lives, whether it be birth in a royal family or even accession to the throne by election, all this is determined through the concept of accumulated karma. Although for Buddhists who believe in reincarnation, these 2 points are not so different. Third, connection with the Sangha. Of course, in the countries described, Buddhism is at least the predominant religion. By supporting the church of the majority of the population, the king is legitimized in their eyes. Fourth, the presence of Buddhist rituals and symbols in the attributes of the state, and as a result, the sacralization of the position of the ruler of the nation. Fifth, an important aspect is the role of the king, the protector of Dharma as a nation-forming element. All subjects of the king can unite around his figure, which becomes a symbol of their identity. And now it becomes difficult to separate the figure of the king from national identity itself. Perhaps this is the most subtle but the most important parameter in modern times. Many people stop believing in the legitimization of theocratic states on the basis of the previous points, but the role of the king as a component of nation works well in the modern narrative. Finally, the sixth, the exception in the form of Tibet and the classical understanding of theocracy, where the bodhisattva himself is the ruler of the nation. These are the 6 main factors of legitimization of Buddhist theocracies. I would like to add one more thought. Max Weber, defining the types of authority, singled out 3. Charismatic, based on the personality of the leader. Traditional, based on the tradition and customs. And rational legal, on the legal system. In Buddhist theocracies, charismatic and traditional systems are amusingly mixed, since the charisma of the ruler takes the form of a tradition, like the barami in Thailand. I hope this thought will encourage someone to do new researches. Analyzing today's cases, we now understand that Buddhist theocracies were able to transform into new narratives. They found their place without giving up either the real power of monarchs or their traditional interpretation. Now, all these monarchies work for nation building, being a unifying factor for the nation. I hope these cases helped you to take a broader look at the issue of theocracies and the legitimization of power in general.
I also hope that the video helped push you to explore new concepts. For example, you can start with the links in the description. My mission is to de-objectify Asia, to show that different regions can provide previously unseen narratives and worldviews.
If you want to support my mission, you can subscribe to Patreon for $3 tier.
Don't forget to like this video and subscribe. Goodbye.